Before I tell this story, you need to understand one thing. This was never about greed. This was about my son. My oldest child is 5 years old. He is autistic. And he doesn't speak. When I was pregnant, my husband's grandfather made me a promise. A very specific one. If I had a son, and named him after him, that child would inherit the family fortune. Several $1 million. Property. Investments. A future secured. It was his dying wish that his name would live on. At the time, I didn't know my son would need extra care. But I agreed. Because I believed I was doing what was best for my family. The plan was clear. The property would pass from grandfather to my father-in-law, to my husband, and finally to my son, Robert IV. Everyone knew this. Everyone agreed. When the grandfather passed away, everything went to my father-in-law, with the understanding that it would one day go to our son. And for years, I believed that was the end of the story. Until last week. My father-in-law has 2 sons. My husband is the oldest. Reliable. Hardworking. Good with money. His younger brother is the opposite. He can't hold a job. He has children with multiple women that he barely sees. He's been in and out of rehab. In and out of jail. Nothing extreme. But constant. Every time he falls, someone catches him. Usually my mother-in-law. Cars. Apartments. Second chances. He wastes all of it. A few months ago, we even gave him our old house. At my mother-in-law's request. So he'd have a stable place to live. So his kids could visit safely. We bought a new home. He moved into ours. And surprisingly, he started paying the mortgage. I assumed he was finally getting his life together. I was wrong. Last Sunday, we were all having dinner. Casual. Normal. Then my brother-in-law casually said he couldn't wait to move into his new place. I asked what he meant. He said he was moving into the grandfather's house. I laughed. Because I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. I pulled my husband and his father aside and asked what was going on. My husband looked just as confused as I felt. That's when my father-in-law told me he was changing the will. The property and investments that were promised to my son were now going to his other son, my brother-in-law. My husband would inherit something else instead. Something smaller. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. That property wasn't just money. It was a plan. A future. A way to make sure my son could live independently. If he needed support when we're gone. A guest house. Rental income. Care if he ever needed it. And now, it was being taken away. When I asked why, my father-in-law didn't hesitate. He said my son didn't live up to the expectations of the family name. That he wasn't the heir his father had imagined. Because my son is autistic. That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't about fairness. This wasn't about tradition. This was about worth. And in their eyes, my son didn't have enough of it. I left that house with my kids. Before I said something I couldn't take back. I was shaking. Not from anger. From disbelief. Later that night, my husband and I talked for hours. He was hurt. But calm. He reminded me that legally, the property belonged to his father. That promises don't always hold up on paper. He said we would find another way to take care of our son if we had to. And I understood his logic. But emotionally? It wasn't enough. Because we didn't just stumble into this life. We worked for it. We sacrificed for it. Everything we have. We earned ourselves. And now we were being cornered. Forced to choose. Which of our children would be secure? Which one wouldn't? That's not a choice parents should have to make. What hurt even more was the hypocrisy. My mother-in-law knew the original plan. She supported it. She praised me for thinking ahead for my son's future. My brother-in-law knew too. He never objected. Not until now. Apparently, he'd been telling my father-in-law that he deserved more. That since we owned 2 homes, it was only fair he got the grandfather's estate. As if the homes we saved for were charity. As if the property promised to my son was a handout. And when I asked why the inheritance couldn't go to my sister-in-law instead, the responsible one, I got my answer. Because only a son could be an heir. That's what they said. A son. Not a daughter. Not an autistic grandson. A son. I realized then that no matter how much I tried to fit in, how much I'd given up, how many compromises I made, my child would never be enough for them. And that's when something shifted in me. Because while they were busy rewriting promises, breaking agreements, and justifying cruelty, they forgot one thing. They weren't the only ones who knew family secrets. There was something buried. Something ugly. Something everyone agreed would never be spoken about. A secret that had the power to destroy everything they were protecting. I hadn't wanted to touch it. Not for years. But if promises no longer mattered, then silence didn't either. And that's when I started thinking about opening the skeleton closet. 2 years ago, something happened that was never meant to come out. At Christmas, the family exchanged DNA test kits. Just for fun. Just curiosity. No one expected anything unusual. Until the results came back. My husband and his siblings weren't all full siblings. Richard wasn't his father's biological son. At first, they thought it was a mistake. Then they confronted their mother. And she broke. She admitted to an affair. Years ago. She said she didn't know if Richard was her husband's child or the other man's. When she got pregnant, she ended the affair. For good. She begged her children to keep it a secret. She said their father would divorce her. That he would disown Richard. That everything would fall apart. And for the sake of peace, they agreed. I agreed too. It wasn't my family. Not my place. Not my secret. So it stayed buried. Until now. Because suddenly, only blood mattered. Only sons mattered. Only legacy mattered. And the man they wanted to give everything to might not even be a son at all. I didn't feel excited about that realization. I didn't feel powerful. I felt sick. Because I knew what using that information would do. It would destroy a marriage. It would fracture a family. It would change lives permanently. But then I thought about my son. 5 years old. Nonverbal. Completely dependent on us. To protect his future. A child who was judged unworthy. Before he ever had a chance. They had already decided. He wasn't good enough. And they did it quietly. Politely. With smiles. They expected me to accept it, to swallow it, to stay grateful. And that's when I realized this wasn't about money anymore. It was about fairness, about broken promises, about punishing a child for being different. They opened the door. Not me. I was just deciding whether to walk through it. And if I did, there would be no going back. I didn't act right away. I didn't rush. I planned. Because if this came out the wrong way, it wouldn't just hurt them. It could hurt my husband, my children, everything we built. So I stayed quiet. And I waited. Then I started asking questions. Carefully. Indirectly. I visited family members. Listened more than I spoke. And eventually, I confirmed what I already suspected. Richard's biological father was real. Local. Traceable. I hired a private investigator. Not to cause chaos, but to be certain. The results came back quickly. There was no doubt. Richard was not his father's son. I sat with that truth for days, knowing exactly what it could do, knowing exactly what it would undo. And still, they were moving forward with the plan. Still preparing to rewrite the future. Still taking something promised to my child and handing it to someone else. So I made a decision. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't warn anyone. I let the truth walk into the room on its own. At a family dinner. A normal night. The door opened. A man walked in and handed papers to my father-in-law. DNA results. Proof. Silence followed. Then shouting. Then screaming. Then years of lies collapsing in seconds. The house erupted. Accusations. Denial. Panic. The man was thrown out. My mother-in-law broke down. My brother-in-law stood frozen. And my father-in-law finally understood that the son he was choosing was never his at all. That night ended everything. Marriages. Loyalties. Illusions. Police were called later. Arrests were made. Accounts were frozen. Lawyers got involved. And the will was restored back to its original form. The promise was kept. Not because of kindness. Not because of love. But because truth has weight. And secrets don't stay buried forever. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. But my son's future was secure. He would have a home. Income. Care. Options. Independence. They said only a son could inherit. They were right. They just chose the wrong one.